Well, welcome. This is Season 1, Episode 1 of Autism Support with the Star Center. We're glad that you've tuned in and joined us, and I'm super excited. Number one, we're going to find out what in the world rock chalk is. I don't know how many of you know, but our guest with us today, one of our team members, Chrissy Watson, she is a graduate of KU, and unfortunately her team lost a couple nights ago, but I still didn't know what rock chalk was. Chrissy, can you tell us what rock chalk is?
Absolutely, Dave. So at the University of Kansas, they have buildings that are all made out of limestone. And so back in the day, I don't know the exact date, but back in the day, one of the professors dubbed the limestone rock chalk. And so at the game and celebration of Kansas and all that is Kansas, the student section started chanting rock chalk Jayhawk.
There you go. There you go. So there is. So for those of you that didn't know, now you know. Now back to what we came to talk about today. It is very interesting when we talk about music and all the different applications that it has. Many folks out there may not know that there are uses for music in those children with autism. And so we're just hoping that you could help us kind of unpack what those would be.
Sure.
Are there kind of three areas, and can you just briefly describe what those are?
Sure. I was thinking today, regards to music with autism, we would talk about transition.
Okay.
Music for transitions, music for communication, and music to assist with learning, like specific skills and specific concepts.
All right, so transition. When you talk about transition, what specifically are you talking about?
So for transition, we usually look at what's going on with if there's a child or a parent who's having some kind of difficulty breaking down from going from one place to the next. So a lot of times we'll have parents come to us and they talk about their child, they just can't get out of the car to get to their next appointment, or they get to school, and that there's this barrier almost in the transition from one place to the next. And we see that a lot. We think it has a lot to do with the structure, that someone gets used to the structure of one environment, and then changing that environment is really difficult, and going from one to the next. So that's what I mean by transition. As far as how we use music in that transition, music can be kind of an expected, structured piece that can help get them through that transition. So if the problem is that they're not expecting the change, or that there's a change in the routine, then we put in something that is expected, that is familiar, that is structured, that can kind of smooth out that change. So
Would this be similar to when you and I both trained recently for a half marathon, and there's one specific song that when it comes on, I immediately think about my training regimen.
Sure.
when I was training, and so it took me to a different place. And is that similar? I mean,
sure, it can kind of push you through, or music. For all of us, music has associations. So we hear a song and we immediately think of something that goes with that song, maybe a person or a place. And so if we can use the same song in a transition maybe, or in a difficult period like you're talking about, if we can use the same song, then it can push us through and make us think of maybe success that we had through that. Maybe that's what you're talking about.
So this could be used whether we're talking about maybe getting dressed.
Sure.
Or getting out of our clothes for the day and into pajamas, or whatever the transition, however small, leaving the house, getting back to the house, getting out of the car, right, going into school, going into church, leaving a function.
Yeah.
However large or small the transition, music. Mm-hmm. Now, is it important that the music be identified as something positive and prior to?
Yeah, well, yes, we found that for the most part, music that's already preferred, if there's a child who really likes Thomas, we find that a lot, or there's a show or, a TV show that they really like, then we might take that melody and change the words to kind of instruct them through that transition. So then the music already has that pleasant, familiar, positive association.
Sure.
But then the information is getting them through that process. Sure. And there's so many transitions every day we don't even think about how much we change what we're doing throughout the day. Like you mentioned, all of those different things. And each of those can create kind of a hiccup in the day for someone with autism. So.
It's fascinating. We're talking about transitions right now. That was number one. Number two is actually communication.
Yeah.
So how in the world, help me understand how we can take music and help someone communicate better?
Well, one of my favorite things to work on actually is communication, because music can get us through. Again, it's the similar idea of you have this breakdown and we're using something different to get us through that. So I was thinking of a couple different things for communication. There's communication that you receive, more like following directions or understanding what someone's talking to you about. And then there's communication that you give. And I've found specifically with some of my clients that we can help with both ends. So talking of like following directions type of idea, a lot of children with autism, they hear speech and they view it as a puzzle almost. And when they hear music, they actually think of it as language. So if we can put the things we want to say to music, it just comes through a lot better. Not entirely sure why that is, but some research that's been done has just reiterated that that is true for children who have a neurotypical brain, who are just typically developing. They hear music and it's just enjoyment. But for someone with autism, they hear it as language. Whereas speech, if you just say, Johnny, sit down, it's so much problem solving going on in their brain. And so if we, again, apply music to what we're already doing and we just give some direction, Johnny, sit down, then that musical part to it gives it a structure, like we talked about before with transitions, gives it a structure, gives it expectation, and gives it direction. So Johnny, sit down, same words, but it actually kind of flows a little bit better through, and there's no puzzle, there's nothing to figure out.
Right.
It's just follow.
And the other piece?
And so when a lot of times we have clients who are nonverbal, who we don't get a lot of words from, and that can be really frustrating, especially in a family when you want to share so much with each other, you want to share, experiences, and you want to communicate verbally, so you can't. A lot of children with autism fit into that category of nonverbal. So one client that I have, we've seen rhythm actually play a big piece in getting a social connection with him. We started just a metronome, which is just a ticker, just a beat. We had from one session to the next session. So just one day where we added this metronome and we saw an immediate connection. It was like we were playing his rhythm. And so immediately he made eye contact with us and he started vocalizing a lot more. So we found that rhythm can really trigger a lot of that communication. And sometimes we can use music and familiar music again, like familiar songs, again, TV show theme songs or whatever. And if we sing a piece of it and then we stop, there's that need to fill it in. So sometimes we can kind of pull language out that way as well.
Absolutely. So the first thing, this is so good, Chrissy. I appreciate you sharing this. The number one was transitions.
Yes.
Number two was communication. And the third thing we're going to talk about today is learning. So how can we incorporate music into the process of learning?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier, like activities of daily living, getting dressed in the morning and eating food and stuff like that. And definitely that incorporates some learning if you've never done that before. So it's kind of a step-by-step process and a sequence. And that also applies to any kind of concept that we need to learn that we've never known before. And so again, with autism, that music, that rhythm, it really kind of puts it into a context, puts this information into a context that we can better understand. And even just us in our development, we used music for learning. We used music for our ABCs. We used music, I know I did, for like quadratic formula and different concepts that were difficult and had a lot of pieces to them. So to make it easier, we put it to music. And it's exactly the same idea of putting information into music so that we see what's coming, we remember it better, it just sticks with us better, we can recall it, we can sing it over and over again, other people can join in with us in the learning, and it's really not that difficult to pick a melody, stick some information to it, have a rhythm that keeps going constantly, and help your child learn whatever you want them to learn.
Fantastic. We got one statement, and that is, if it were not for the Addams Family theme song, neither one of my children would know their days of the week.
There
And
you
so
go.
so there was a way that learning and music were incorporated.
Sure.
The first question is, I can't sing at all.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Could
No,
I?
I'm just kidding. You can sing great.
You're right. You're right. But could someone who can't sing, and whether they think they can or it doesn't matter, they're not going to try. And so how do you overcome that as a parent?
Yeah, and we have lots of parents who have a couple things. Usually they tell us either, I can't sing, or some of the teachers we've worked with, they're also trying to reach their students with autism. They say, well, I don't know, I can't sing. But if you look at our pop music these days, that's not really a requirement to reach the youth. And honestly, they're not going to care.
Right.
Music, as long as it has that predictable pattern to it, it does not matter. If you add rhythm, that doesn't take singing at all. That's just clapping or a beat, or put some music on that that is going to be successful for your child or preferred by them. But singing is not a requirement to reach your child. They will love the effort that you're putting forth.
It's certainly good news to me, and I'm certainly I'm sure that it's good news to many that are listening as well. If I wanted to find out more, where would I go?
Well, obviously, Star Center has resources that we love to share with parents. We have an email list that anybody who's interested in can be on that, and we will just share any resources we get. You can come visit Star Center, come tour, come talk to us. And then if you want more information about music specifically and music therapy, just musictherapy.org is a good website to go to. They have lots of information, not just about autism, but also other people that we work with and techniques we use. So.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of all of the families that have benefited from your work, not only here in Jackson, Tennessee, but throughout your journey, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for spending these short minutes with us, but minutes that moms and dads can put to use